helping you with Acorn and RISC-OS computing.
Now I'll share my screen, and hopefully somewhere between all this lot, exit minimize video, there we are, share screen. It's saying share screen, and I have to do that one, presumably. And share it that way, yes. Now, is that more like it? We're nearly there.
Nearly.
Right, let's make it start then.
Yay!
You start from first slide. Well, that was interesting. Why have I got that? I don't know. Dear. Is that going to stay for subsequent slides? Let's have a look. It is. That's a throw. Or is it? Oh, don't know why I managed to get that bit. I think you're going to have to live with that.
Are you sharing the whole screen, Peter, or are you just sharing the window?
That's a good question. You are screen sharing. Let's go back again. We'll stop the share. Go to share screen. And go to that one then. And share that. That's better, isn't it? Yeah, there we are. And you can hear me. Yes.
Yay.
Yeah, hooray. Enjoy yourself. Yeah. You may have guessed this is my first time on this one. So hello, everybody. Topical, as somebody said, helping you to use technology to save you money and saving money on your technology, hopefully. I will be looking off to the side here because I've got my note screen over here rather than a piece of paper or something. So the good news is we're using the right computers, as we'll see in a short while. It's also worth saying that often you have to spend to save when you're doing something. You have to buy some new technology. Oh, that's good. Why is... Now let's see. There we go. Getting my thing. So there we are. So on-powered RISC-OS computers are some of the most efficient in the world, and I think we all knew that anyway, didn't we? And you do have to spend to save. So sometimes you have to buy a piece of tech to save you the money. So it's a matter of how quickly do you get that money back. So initially we'll be looking at watts of power. I don't know how familiar everyone is with watts and kilowatt hours, but basically 1 unit of electricity is a kilowatt hour, and thank goodness our computers don't take that much normally. So we won't see mega savings on computers, but when we show you one of the charts later on, you'll see that it's quite a bit cheaper to use a RISC-OS computer than it is to use a PC, even a laptop. So regarding kilowatt hours, you may have guessed a kilowatt is a unit that you measure your meters on. So computers usually take a lot less than the kilowatt, but heating, water, central heating, that sort of thing, usually take quite a lot more than a kilowatt. So let's say a computer and a screen takes about 200 watts. In some cases it might do. After 5 hours, you've used 1 kilowatt hour, so that'd be 1 unit. So there we are. So firstly, I had a look at power used by all different computers, and it's not exact. It's interesting that one of these magazines used to get, Computer Shopper, used to tell you 3 different things. What you were using when theoretically it was off, i.e. in standby. What we're using if the screen was just on with no programs loaded, and then where to be if you had, programs running and possibly using graphics and things like that. And we don't do that any longer. It's actually quite difficult to find those things. So I've had to go a little bit back with some and do some estimates on others. But a tablet computer is around about the cheapest one to use. It's got a low initial cost. It only consumes about 15 watts. So if you're just going to browse the internet for browsing the internet's sake, you might as well use a tablet. Don't bother using anything else. It's the cheapest one going. So that will be an Android or an iPad one, both similar sort of consumption. So let's have a look. The next one up is something I've got to my left here, and that's the ARM book. And that takes about 20 watts. Because it's got a smallish screen compared to a lot of laptops. I think it's a 10 or a 12-inch rather than a 14, 17-inch screen. And screens are usually the thing that can take quite a bit. Although, as I say, we'll be having a look at a little spreadsheet later on to show us what that is. So what's one after that? So the next one is possibly what a lot of us use, which is anything up to a Pi 4 and a 22-inch monitor. And that takes about 40 watts. If you consider like old bulbs that we used to have in the house, that'd be a dull light bulb. So we know we're not taking mega amounts there. And the real advantage of using anything with a separate monitor is you can just switch the screen off. So when you switch the screen off, we'll see that's around about 20 to 30 watts. So you can leave the computer running, switch the screen off, come back to it later on in the day or whatever, or if you're just answering the phone or something like that. So let's have a look what is next. So as I mentioned, the size of the screen determines the power used to some extent. And older screens are less efficient. I've got an old Panasonic TV downstairs, and it's probably about 8 years old. It takes about 80 watts, whereas a newer model only takes somewhere between 38 and 52 watts. So that's just having a look at different averages, different manufacturers over time. That's not too bad. Let's have a look. What else we have? Yeah. And just in case anyone's got an A9 home, which I do, they take about 5 watts. So I think somewhere in between the lowest powered Pi and the highest powered Pi. Right. So let's go on to a low spec PC laptop. So we'll assume it's got a 13-inch screen, it's an SSD, and it's got integrated graphics. That will probably be about 50 watts when in use. So I think it was around about 40 for the Pi 4 and what have you. So not too bad, but you know, it won't go at the speed of light. It might start quickly with the SSD. You won't be able to play mega games on it, but then, you know, a lot of people don't. They just look at the internet. But as we said, if you're just looking at the internet, tablet's definitely the best one for power consumption. So this is where we get to the desktop PC, which a lot of people could have. So the idle, i.e. it's on, no programs are really doing anything, it's just showing the backdrop, could be anywhere between 37 and 96 watts, which is substantially more than a Pi 4 and screen. And we haven't even added screen to the desktop PC on this one, that's just the actual unit itself. So if you have a larger HD and graphics card, it'll probably use between 74 and 106 when idling. So not actually running any programs at that, which is a bit mind-boggling, really. So as we said, the screen size affects power consumption. I think this is where I've got, yes, some of the it's not the most recent version. I had a bit of a problem trying to load the most recent version of this. So as I mentioned, separate screens have the advantage of being able to be turned off and leave the computer running. Of course, some of the screens have DPMS. So if there is a period of inactivity, then that would switch the screen off for you. And I think there's equivalents on HDMI. I know on the Pinebook handbook that I've got at the side here, you set a blank time for it. I think mine's currently set at 2 minutes, so it dulls the screen down. You can still see you've got something. So that does save the power consumption on the laptop. So let's have a look. What else do we know about this? I'm playing between two. I see it's interesting fun, this looking left and right. So yeah. I think for most of us, unless you're doing big graphics editing, video editing and stuff like that, you won't need a PC with a huge graphics card. A lot of the integrated ones, and I think that's Intel and the other ones are just, you know, quite sensible for what you want to do and will actually drive 2 screens if you want to. But if anyone was going on to do like flight sims, I know my girlfriend's son, he loves flight sims. He has a mega graphic card. I think it takes like 70 watts by itself. So that's a Pi 4 being thrashed to within an inch of its life and a screen. But if you want to do that sort of thing, that's what you have to get to do it. I mean, one of the things that I think would be quite nice, and a lot of people I'm sure here would be interested in, if we could have dual screens on the Pi 4. So then we know we're only taking 10 watts, but you've got dual screen capability when you need it. And of course, you can switch off the second screen if you don't need the second screen. Now, if we're really going to do big things with your computers, one of the biggest ones, other than flight sims, actually a sort of work-related one, is to do video editing. Now, it's interesting, this one, because obviously we know that Macs are now ARM-powered. So if you want to do video editing, I think we were trying out one of the mid-range early Mac laptops that use ARM power, and apparently it thrashed the pants off PCs because it's optimized for video editing. That's the way its architecture works. So if you wanted to save power and do video editing, I have to say, buy a Mac. There we go. Not often people say that, is it? Right. Of course, one of the things you don't have to do, you don't have to buy a new computer. And the other thing with Windows PCs, obviously you can put them into sleep mode. So, I mean, if someone rings the doorbell, I just put my PC into sleep mode, and we'll see in a second how little that takes. I think it'd be as little as 3 watts, which is pretty good. So let's have a look now. So we're talking about the 3 different power states that you can have on PCs particularly. So a low-spec PC laptop would take 2 in standby, 13 in idle, i.e. not run any programs, and maybe 50 watts when you're using it all properly. A mid-spec PC laptop, the standby is around about the same, but obviously the idle goes up to 48, and you could take up to 120 watts when you're using it all properly. I've not done high-spec ones because those can end up being gaming laptops, which are fairly specialist. But if you look at a desktop PC, a sort of low-spec one, 3 is standby, 37 to 96 for the idle, 74 to 160 watts for doing stuff. And as mentioned here, newer high-power Macs use less power for equivalent grunt compared to a PC. So that's quite interesting to see. And of course, they've been partners with ARM since pretty early on as well. Now, I don't know if you can see all this. I've got a little bit of obscuring of myself on the sidebar here with my own picture, but that's just like a quick thing to have a look at. The standby, idle and use where it's relevant. And the interesting thing I just thrown in for fun is a couple of printers. So an inkjet multifunction printer. Get my teeth back in. Is 3, 6, and 22. Mono laser is 3, 3, and 980. So that's probably like the biggest consuming electronic thing you'll sensibly have, other than a mega video editing thing. And as we mentioned, 22-inch monitor, which is, I think, possibly what a lot of us use. It's 25 to 30 something. I can't quite say. I've got my window obscured here. So, where we're up to next. And this is where I had some fun. We're mentioning different things, different relativities. So we can, if we go back, you can see that Pi 4 was 10 watts plus a monitor. Whereas if you look at a low spec PC, just a desktop one, that'd be 37 to 96. And then you have to add the monitor on that. So you could be using between 27 and 86 more watts than most of us would really want to use. So interesting. Of course, we said Windows PCs can be put to sleep. Some people may want to do that on a permanent basis. I don't know. Right. So, of course, one of the things we don't have to do, we don't have to buy new. But unfortunately, generally what happens is new technology does more and is usually more efficient at doing it, but of course can cost a bomb. So we're looking at old technology for this one. So that could be mobile phones, could be a laptop. In fact, I think most people now, if you go into a major city, there's a computer exchange shop. There are a whole chain across the UK as far as I'm aware. And I bought myself, what was it? The laptop I'm actually using here. Bought myself a Pi 3, and quite a few years ago I got an Android tablet. And the nice thing about computer exchange is they do a guarantee. And I think it was 3 years on the Android tablet, which was quite a surprise. Obviously, there are other second-hand places, refurbished phones and things like that. So that might be worth having a look at. But the catch we all know with most modern equipment, it has an expected life. Now, this might be, and in a way, Windows is sort of better to some extent, in that if you've got the right technology, you can upgrade and still keep the life cycle going of something. But Android tablets, phones, and all phones basically, and iPads, they have a shelf life, usable life of between 4 and 6 years. I think it might extend to 7 in certain circumstances. Part of the catch being, as we all know, you keep doing updates and updates and updates, and eventually you've got an old OS that you can't update to a new one because the specs too low. So, I mean, if you are buying secondhand, that's something to check. When I was looking to get this tablet, I just wanted something to take on a long holiday. So I thought, well, if I can get something for 60 quid that's got a screen, runs Android, can look at photos and play some games, that's fine. And I got quite a reasonable sized tablet. And now I think it's gone past its sell-by date. Yes, I can look at all the photos and put them up and down, but it doesn't really do a lot of the other OS things on it, not at any sensible speed anyway. So if you're going to buy a second-hand, you need to know the options and sort of the useful life that you're going to get out of it. So now we're going to something else, lighting. Can you remember those bad old days when we all used to have 40, 60, 100 watt and possibly even bigger lights? I was having a look in, CPC is a company I deal with. There's some details I'll show you at the end of them. And they actually do 3 watt bulbs. And I think the main light in the bedroom here is a 5. I'm sure that used to be a 40, something like that. So you can make quite a lot of saving on bulbs. You generally only need a couple of bigger lights, and quite often you need smaller side lights, and 3 watts, very low power and reasonable brightness. So that's possibly something to have a look at. Now, going to phones, internet and broadband. Obviously, a lot of companies will try and sell you the whole deal. You can get this and that and that, and we'll do it for this wonderful amount of money. But quite often you're better off actually unbundling. So you might get your phones from one place, your internet, broadband from another, mobile phone, if it's that sort of thing, from a third provider. We know it's easier if it's all on one, but usually end up paying for it. I know a friend of mine was on Virgin for broadband and TV, and can't remember what the price was, but I just asked them to ring up, and I think it says, coming up shortly. If you ring up and say you're going to leave, you can probably save 20 quid a month, whatever package on, unless it was £19.99, obviously. So it's interesting that there isn't a loyalty bonus. There's a loyalty lack of bonus on these things. So if you've been with somebody for a number of years, you actually get done. So you're better off swapping, despite the annoyance of having to do it. And mobiles, I don't know who uses the mobile which way. As an older person, small screens are a bit rubbish for me. Fingers aren't very good at pressing stuff. So I tend to use mine for calls. I'll use the internet out and about every so often, but if you use the internet, I'll probably go home and use it. So you don't necessarily need a high spec. I often wonder at some of the prices of some of them. £1,000 for a phone that you might just leave on the top of your car and drive off. It seems a bit bonkers to me. If it makes sense to you, fair enough, and we understand business people probably use them. I've got I think it's 1-year-old Alcatel, right from Argos. It's 120 quid. It's got HDR camera. I think it's full 1080p video. There's all the stuff I need, but obviously you can get last year's model cheaper, as well. So you can get good second-hand deals on mobiles. And if you're looking at the way that you run your phone as well, there are many different SIM deals. But saying if you're looking at the internet, it's a bit pointless using your phone for it unless you've got a good SIM deal to get lots of data across the internet. It's cheaper to use the home internet because it costs effectively nothing all the time, doesn't it? You don't have a data limit either. So, but there are different ones for pay-as-you-go. I've got an old pay-as-you-go one. I think it ends up being I put about 60 quid a year on it. It's just in the car in case the car breaks down, whatever, get held up in traffic. So as I say, I just use mine for text and what have you. Different people need different things, but always worth looking at different tariffs. So. Right, on to different sorts of entertainment. I think most people have to get a TV license in the UK currently for whatever you're watching on. I don't know if there's an exemption for streaming only, something I didn't have a look in. But it lets you get Freeview and FreeSat, and I think FreeSat has a few more HD and some more obscure programs in it than the Freeview one. But of course, guess what? After you paid your license fee, that's it for the year. So I think we mentioned earlier about unbundling things. So if you've got a TV, broadband, phone thing, Definitely have a look at other prices, see what things you actually watch. And interestingly, most people watch stuff, everything's on Freeview. I mean, obviously, if you're into certain series of things, like Game of Thrones was a big thing for a lot of people, then you'd have to get that, which of course was a Sky thing. But now some of these things are being run by streaming companies. So you might go, it's only a tenner a month on such and such. That's what I want. I know I like Formula One. And I could pay for it on Sky, but I think it's £10 per thing. Admittedly, it's a long coverage. It's about 5 hours, something like that. But there's 20 races, so that's £200. And I actually watch it 4 hours later on Channel 4. And that cost me nothing, because Channel 4 is on Freeview and off you go. And in fact, I actually prefer the coverage that Channel 4 do. So sometimes you're paying for things that you don't actually, want. So let's have a look. So, yeah. And as I say, one of the things, if you've got any sort of deal with anybody when it comes towards end of contract, just say you're thinking of leaving, and quite often you'll get a discount just by doing that. So you don't have to change anything as such, just your payments. And obviously, there's quite a lot of free catch-up internet services as well now. There's I think all the major channels, Discovery, do them, what have you. So you do have to ask, what are you missing? And the answer is not too much. But again, if it's something you want to watch, you pay for it. But as I say, I can wait a while and find out. And of course, you will have some TV remotes, which will use batteries. And to be honest, I think the only normal batteries I have are in my TV remotes anymore. I've been using rechargeable nickel metal hydrides. I think the charges are usually about 10, 15 quid, depending on how many batteries do and how quickly they do them. And obviously the batteries cost more than a normal battery, but I've got some nickel metal hydrides I've been using now for 5 years. Still absolutely fine, keeping all the charge, not a problem at all. So all good as far as I'm concerned with that one. Right, now on to the big stuff. Heating and motors take the most power. So if you have a look around your house, you can guess what's going to take the power. So your dishwasher has some heating in that. Washing machine's got heating and spinning things. But I think the one that takes the most overall, because you have it on the longest, would be a tumble dryer. So I don't know whether smart meters are a good thing or not. It's interesting. My girlfriend got one recently, and she now fills the kettle less than she used to, because she saw what the difference was. But you still have to do the washing. So you're not careful, the smart meter could worry you to death, or it could make some use. So I haven't got one. I think I'm using things smartly anyway. But if you've got an older system of central heating in your house, if you've not got thermostatic radiator valves, then that's something you can fit quite easily, even if you don't change your boiler. And I think they're about £35 per heater, so that's nothing too ridiculous. But obviously, modern condensing boiler, I think that's around about 15 to 30% more efficient than older boilers over 10 years generally aren't condensing sort. So that's something to have a look at. But as we're saying, you have to spend to save. So, I mean, heating is one of your biggest expenses. So if you know you've not got a condensing boiler, you can get somebody to have a look and just check that for you. But generally, if they're over 10 years old, depending on the size of your house, that's going to be £1,500. I mean, seeing what the electric and gas bills might be, you might get your money back in less than 2 years on that one. So that's something, one way around things. Another thing you can get are the clever remote thermostats. You need to get someone to replace your normal thermostats, and these are internet, mobile stroke connected. So what they can do, Nest and Hive are the two main ones for this one. They can you can change zones and put different temperatures in different rooms. Of course, you have to keep the door shut if you're going to do that. If you knew you weren't using a lot of rooms in the house, you could drop the temperature down in those by, say, 5 degrees C to about 15. Have the rooms you are using on 20. And I know you can get cleverer things as well, so that if somebody opens a window, obviously you have to have all the wiring in to do all this, it actually turns the heater off, because there's no point really heating the room to send it all out the window, really. And yet lots of people do that. So, when you see your bill, you might go, I'll tell you what, we'll stop doing that one. And I think recommended temperature for houses, unless you've got somebody who's quite old, bit infirm, what have you, is to keep them to 20 degrees. And if you're going to go out, turn the heating down to 15 and then come back later and turn it up to the 20. And I must say, I've been to some people's houses and you go, it's like Barbados. I always reckon if you're not wearing a jumper in winter, your central heating's up too high. I think that's what jumpers were for. We weren't meant to go around in string vests in winter. I'm sure there's some law against that somewhere, or a TV series, one of the two. Right. Now, yes, I don't know if it's on the next slide or not. Let's have a look. Oh, it says end of presentation. That was far too quick. Yeah, one of the things I've not mentioned here is that you can actually get, a mate of mine's got this on a fairly modern house, ground source heat pumps. Now, depending which council you're with, I know Durham Council has been running this for a short while, you can get a ground source heat pump thing. This is a sneaky thing that takes heat out of the ground. Usually links into a gas boiler, but if you're normally using a bit of hot water during the day in summer, you might not actually turn the gas on at all. It all comes from the ground source heat pump. You usually have to make sure you've got modern radiators fitted, which are more efficient. Yeah, now that one I think they were saying actual cost price was around about 1,500. However, that doesn't include any fitting, which was part of the deal for the lower energy houses that they were covering in Durham. So I think that could be up to 3,500. But again, depending on what the heating bills are this winter, you could get that back in less than 5 years. So yeah, lots of different things. Now I've actually missed one of the slides off. I said I couldn't actually get my most recent one up. I was having some real problems just before I came. It wouldn't even let me run my own presentation. Oh, the joy of Windows. So one of the other things I've not had a look at is cooking. So what I'll just do is I'll go to a blank slide and unshare me, if I could do that. Let's see. Get the right mouse, a good set. Yeah, so that should be back to me and everybody, I think. Yeah, so I was having a look at cooking because I think I might have mentioned, tumble dryers were like the worst thing in the world for electric. I've not got a kilowatts thing, but I know some people leave them on for hours. And the answer is change your washing to a sunny day and you'll save a lot of money. Just use outside. I'll just cover the heating food side. So unfortunately, I've not got this slide on. It's just a problem I've had with the presentation. So how can we get rid of it? Well, if you eat salads, have sandwiches, have fruit and cereals. That's one way around it, but I think everybody wants a hot meal every so often, don't they? So you know that we have to use something. And surprise, surprise, a microwave is the most efficient method of doing things. Doesn't get a nice crust on your pasty, unfortunately. But that brings us on to the next point, that if you've got a small item such as a learned pasty in a big oven, you can guess you're not going to be cost effective. So if you're going to put something in your oven, do quite a few things at once. I mean, you could do like a lot of people make a stew or something like that, and then separate it out into portions for later on in the week. But if you can fill the oven up, then you're cooking more things at the same time. You're getting the best energy usage out of your item. Of course, the other way around that, and I've got one of these at home, is if you get one of these combination ovens, which is a microwave, a grill, and a convection oven, they're quite useful because, again, it's sort of fairly compact. But of course, if you've got a big family, you may need all the space that a proper oven has to use that. So what else did I say? Yeah. Working the other way around, don't use a microwave to defrost stuff. If you've got enough time, get it out, leave it on the side, and then you won't have to switch on the power for all that. So I think that was a very quick one, wasn't it? I must have been rattling on there. I think that's round about it. So questions from people now. So I don't know if I have to unshare or we've got lots of stuff in the chatties down the bottom here. Let's have a look. Now, can I read my chat thing? There we are. Oh, yes, here we are. So we've got read through the chat if most of the people aren't doing this. Oh, somebody's beat me. They're using 2.2 watt golf ball bulbs. So 3 watts. Oh, I've just been ludicrous, haven't I?
I've just bought a load of these.
You've got, what have you got there, Ruth? Right.
LED candle lamp, but with the actual
Clear.
LEDs in filament.
Yes. Yeah.
So they look very pretty when they're in a sort of a chandelier type arrangement, or
you have chandeliers at your house.
Well, you know what I mean, a chandelier type, like that sort of thing.
Yes, yeah. A multi-lamp array. Yes, we'll cover.
Now the sad thing is, these don't like being on dimmers. These are supposed. These particular ones are supposed to be okay on dimmers, but they're not. They're basically they're either on or off. But it's still only taking 4 watts even when they're on, so that's pretty good.
That's true. Yeah, I think I've got some. I think I've got a dimmable LED one, and occasionally it flutters terribly.
Yeah.
And generally it's too bright, if that makes any sense. So I'm just having a look at some of the comments I've caught up with now. Most of my house is now on LEDs, but watch out for the nasty daylight ones.
Yeah.
I know there's different.
I bought them by mistake. I saw them in Home Bargains about a fortnight ago. And it said dimmable on the box. And I thought, brilliant, dimmable ones. So I bought those, put them in my shopping basket, paid for them, brought them home, put them in. And of course, they're the high colour temperature ones.
Yes.
So they're very
garish.
Light.
Yeah.
They're not very pleasant at all. Probably all right in your garage or something like that. But maybe in an office type room, but not in a domestic setting where you want to have a relaxing evening.
I had a lot of trouble with those particular type of lamps in a multi-way fitting. The contacts on the sockets were not good, and quite often it wouldn't pass the current.
All right.
I had to throw the whole lot away and buy a degradable LED instead, which is actually much tidier. But there was too much, I suppose, resistance in the socket, and they wouldn't strike.
All right.
Some of the sockets were just, it was an elderly fitting, and probably a 10-year-old fitting, but whereas a conventional halogen lamp would work fine, there weren't taking enough current to get the thing to work. So I had to.
Was that the compact fluorescent ones, Charles? Was that the?
No, I was using little halogens of that size, and they were wonderful. When I went for the ones with the LED filaments, half the sockets wouldn't drive them, and I thought I had dubbed into bulbs, and no, I hadn't. It was just some of the sockets weren't clean enough.
Low resistance. Get them apart and try. And so I bought brand new things, which are now much better anyway. But of course, you have to spend, as you say, spend money in order to save money. Yeah. Well, I mean, if you think about it, when it's coming towards winter, you're going to have the lights on 6 or 8 hours a day, aren't you? Something like that. So I do know that when the EEC, you may think bad things about them. This is one of their better things. When they changed alter from filament bulbs to, I think initially CFLs and then LEDs and all these different ones that we have now, they could actually switch off 4 power stations because that's the reduction in lighting that people were, now not using in their home. So quite a substantial saving that way around. I'm just having a look through some more of the comments here. Alan was saying that the warm white LEDs are done by filtering off some of the blue ends, so maybe a bit duller for a given power. What else have we got? You'd need a license to use a BBC iPlayer. Yeah, I would have thought that myself, but it is a tricky one, and a lot of people get confused about it. And there are only fairly rare circumstances where in Britain you don't need a license. If you haven't got a TV at all, that used to be the case, but they changed that because I remember I used to deal with this sort of thing, and it was apparatus capable of receiving a TV signal. So that would be an internet-enabled computer that's looking at BBC iPlayer. And a lot of students in universities fall foul of this one. Right, from Alan again, heat pumps produce around 2 kilowatts to 3 kilowatts of heat for 1 kilowatt of electrical input. However, the price of electric was around about 2.5 times the price of gas, so no saving. Yeah, well, I was watching a program this week actually, and there's an intriguing thing. We're looking at the graph of prices of gas. And although in Britain, we only take 30% of gas to create electricity, all the rest is on hydroelectric or renewables. The price of electric follows gas, and there's no reason for it to do that whatsoever. So, I mean, if it was me in government, and some people know me, I'd just say, I'm sorry, you just can't do that. You can only earn 50% more than the price of the whole production to the end customer. You can't have that. I think in some cases it was 6 times, some ridiculous amount, because one of the companies was all renewables. So once they'd, paid to get all their infrastructure, they weren't actually doing anything. The rest was just massive profits. So how we deal with that one, I don't know. Just to ask them to live in a poor household, I think. And Vince MH to everyone says, I've been doing the multiple things in the oven forever, approximately. Just makes sense. However, I use the oven a lot less now. I have an air fryer. There you go. Yeah, I've not had a look at these, but we'll show you a magazine here, which strangely covers a number of these. Computer Active, I don't know if you've seen this one. I got this now instead of Computer Shop, and that covers a lot of broadband unbundling deals and power usage of bits and bobs. And as I say, this one, you occasionally get a little catalogue from CPC. I think this is quite an old one. It's a bulk bargains one. And that's where I get my cheap lamps from. I think they're about £2 each. Don't know what anyone else pays for them. So I think that's about it, unless you've got any other queries or cross questions from people. It's your time to shine, but not too brightly, in case it takes too much power.
Screwfix are very good price for lamps as well.
Right, yeah.
Very good, particularly if you buy a box of 5 or something like that.
Yeah, you usually get discounts on 5 or more, don't you? Yeah. I mean, one of the things I do with my house, and it's a security measure, actually, I've got a number of lights on timers. I know somebody else didn't do this, went away for a holiday for a fortnight, got a house broken into because someone had been watching. No lights on one day, no lights on the next day, no lights on the day afterwards. Let's break in. So I always have timers on mine. So I usually have one downstairs, one at the top of the stairs, one another in my kitchen as well, which just about shows through the front. So it looks as though I might be moving around a bit. But of course, if they're only 2 or 3 watts, you're not really using anything, and saving your house getting broken into. And the timers are, I think, they're about £2 each, just those little, clockworky looking ones, a few pegs in or some buttons. So that's definitely a useful thing to do. And I think, of course, if you've watched what's it now, The Big Bang Theory, of course, you know if you get the internet connected ones, you can have lots of things going wrong. I think one of the jokes was, this guy in China, his lights keep going on and off. And then he went, oh no, he's got our address and he's doing ours now. So there could be downsides to have an internet connected device. I think it's the IoT, isn't it? The Internet of Things. But apparently security on them is poor, I think we would say. So
I can show you what's just arrived at my house earlier today. I'll lift it up. At grave danger. I'm going to lift it up to the camera. A nice big, well, I say big. It's is it about 10 inches by 8 inches by 6 inches, something like that. Oh, it's heavy enough when you've got a bad back.
Yeah.
And I'm awaiting on the delivery of a couple of solar panels, which are, all being well, going to go up on the roof of my garage outside. Over the other side of this room, which I can't be bothered to go and get because my back's hurting too much, is an inverter, so in theory, the solar panels should generate something like 200 watts in bright sunshine. So obviously it's the wrong time of year, isn't it? But you know, so there should be a couple of those going through a charge controller into said lithium. What is it?
Lithium ion.
Lithium iron phosphate.
Right.
Should keep that topped up, and then all the things in my garage, like my power tool chargers, security system which controls a couple of outdoor lights, a couple of LED outdoor lights which are they're very, very bright, but they're 15 watts each.
Oh, they're amazing, some of them, yeah.
So if all of those can be fed from the inverter, which is in turn is fed from that battery, you know, I should get a bit of a saving from that. I'll see how it goes over the next, you know, well, until next spring. And it might be worth at that point. It might be worth adding another panel. So the price of solar panels is going up. When I first had this idea of sticking solar panels on the roof of my garage, it was very roughly £1 a watt.
Right.
So you could get a 100-watt panel for about £100. Now it's about £150.
Yeah, shucks.
So, everybody's having the same idea, aren't they? They're all thinking, quick, go buy some solar panels.
I mean, the other thing I didn't mention, just having looked through my notes and I remember what I've gone through is you do, if you're going to have any heating in a house, you really have to have double glazed doors. I mean, I used to have a porch door that was a normal wooden one, and I got an internal door as well. And the internal door, when I changed the external door to a double glazed one, was infinitely warmer all throughout the year, you know. So just having one door will make a difference. So although it was onto the porch, onto the front room, I know it was heating the front room less because the porch door wasn't as cold, you know. So you have to have loft insulation, double glazed all throughout, as your starter for 10, really. I know there's a friend of mine, he actually managed to build an eco house. He had a look at his garden and went, I think I might be able to build a house there. And he had obviously a fair bit of spare money. And he got one of these ground source heat pumps as standard. It's insulated up to the eyeballs. I think it's even triple glazed. And he's got one of these massive water storage things, which does his toilet flushing and I think the washing machine as well. But of course, that's a lot of money up front, you know. But he's probably the happiest person at the moment with fuel bills. But most of us won't be able to get to that because it's that much of an investment to get there. But, you know, loft insulation, if you don't have it, that's quite cheap to put in. A couple of double glazed doors, if you don't have them, not ridiculous. And, you know, you'll notice probably it's like the payback time, isn't it? You know, how long does it take you to notice it was worth doing, you know? So if you're thinking moving house, don't do any of that. Let somebody else do it, you know.
This is why I'm sort of experimenting with this small system first, because 18 months' time I'll be retired officially. And hoping to move house anyway. Right. So it would be pretty silly to spend thousands, if not tens of thousands, on having solar panels on the roof and then move.
Yeah, so someone else gets a benefit.
A system like this, at least when I move, I can either take it with me, or at least I can use it as a system that I can stick in the back of my van and use it when we go camping or something like that.
Well, that's right. If it's solar panels and bits and bobs, you can do that. Yeah, and as you say, that's
enough to power a small little portable fridge. You know, a beer cooler, that sort of thing. So
does it give? It gives 240 out, does it? Or does it give 12 volt?
Yeah, the inverter that I've got with this kit, it's only 600 watts.
Right.
It'll take 1,000 watts, what they call peak. So if you're firing something up that's got a motor on it,
a start,
it takes a little bit.
It'll get started. Yeah. yeah. Because the other thing is as well, if you are out in the middle of nowhere, it's got you can put USB chargers into it, so your phone will never go flat with that.
That's on the the inverter as well.
Yeah, yeah. I know. Actually, I've seen some programs on internet and TV about people in log cabins in the middle of nowhere, and they've got quite big solar arrays going into quite a lot of storage batteries, and obviously it's going to cost a shed load of money, but they can nearly run a microwave on it. So I go, that's not too bad, is it? But or lighting for like 4 days, even if it was dark for the next 4 days, they've got that sort of background of things going on. So yeah. I mean, the other thing is, I was having a look when we had all the not floods, all the high winds that knocked down all the telecommunications, particularly in the northeast where I am. We lost our television transmitter for a month, effectively. And I was having a look at, well, what should you do if it gets really bad? And the answer is, if you've got a car, you're all right. You've got some heating there. You can get a kettle that plugs into your car and have a cup of tea, and you've got the heat in there. Then what you do is you drive off to the library and use their Wi-Fi and take your sandwiches and just eat those as you're leaving. But if everyone was in the library, I mean, this is what's interesting. What they used to do in the old days, you'd sleep with the cattle because all animals and people give off heat. It might be a bit smelly if you've got a lot of cows and things like that, but that's what they use for their heat. It was sort of like your overnight heating. So
there's been an interesting announcement this week. A couple of pubs in Northampton are now doing a come and stay all day as long as you buy a cup of coffee for £1.50. Save your heating bills by turning the heating off at home.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, in a way, parties could be the best thing. They usually have to spend more on booze than you do on people coming in the house. Yeah.
At least you'll enjoy it more.
Yeah, you would enjoy it a lot, yes.
You get crowded in the house, you don't need to turn the heating on.
Exactly, correct, yeah. I mean, they know in some big venues, it's absolutely freezing. Then they get everybody in the venue and you have to sort of nearly take the roof off to let the steam out, So, yeah, I think people on average give out about 30 watts. So, that's one way around. I have a cruel thing, though. I'm retired now, and a lot of older people complain about the cold in the house. And I thought, well, there's a way around this. What you do is you get them some wood and a very blunt saw, right? You say, try and saw that piece of wood. 10 minutes later, you'll be pulling the layers off. But of course, the other thing you can do is, and I tend to do this a little bit, I'm in my sort of music rooms upstairs anyway. In winter, just go upstairs. And Scandinavians, they live upstairs and go downstairs to bed because they know it saves fuel doing it that way around. I mean, it depends on the layout of your house, but I've got some computers upstairs, got some tellies upstairs. I mean, music rooms upstairs don't actually need to be downstairs at all, really. I just tend to eat my lunch down there, that's about it, really. In winter, anyway. So you can definitely tell the difference upstairs and downstairs. And part of the catch is house design's changed now. So mine's like an open downstairs, pretty much. So, of course, all the heat goes up the stairwell anyway, whereas in the older houses, you used to have a door on the stairs, didn't you? Because you knew the heat was going to disappear up there. So, horses for courses. I mean, the thing is, we shouldn't have to be bothering that much, but I think everybody does, really, unless you have a fantastic pension scheme, in which case you can probably go to Barbados and not bother about any of this. I think most of us are staying in the country somewhere, aren't we? So, but yes,
nice one.
Yeah. I'm going to say there's one or two other things we can save money on. A lot of people don't realise when you use the remote control on your TV and you press off, it only puts your TV into standby. A lot of people do not realise that. And it can, mine, for instance, will use 8 watts or whatever in standby sitting around. There is an option to turn it down to low saving mode. But you should really turn it off if you can. But a lot of people don't like. They just always put it on standby, not realising it's still using power in the background. So it starts up a couple of seconds quicker.
Yeah,
to be honest,
I've had a look at these figures actually, Chris, and they've changed all the ratings because I was looking for a fridge just before the end of lockdown, which was really annoying. Otherwise, I'd have bought a second-hand one. And I was looking, and of course, you used to have A through to I think D, something like that, right? And all these fridges were coming out at G. I thought, I want to get one that's better than that. And of course, what I then found out was they changed all the ratings, didn't they? So we used to have A triple star, right, through to D, and now it's A through to H. So nearly everything is a G, and that's partially because of televisions. Now, what you were saying is true. I think I mentioned about my older television takes about 80 watts, a newer one takes about 50 watts. And one of the things the EC's mandated is that the standby should now be 1 watt. So it shouldn't be 5.
Very low now. They've changed the gradings.
They have, yes, that's right, yes.
Why do they
always start at A?
Yeah.
Sorry, Richard.
Starting at A, because with what's currently available, because as soon as new technology comes along, you've got to go AA or A plus, or
that's why it was A 3 stars originally through to D. So we've changed it to A through to H. So nearly everything is, if it's poor, it's an H. If it's good, okay, it's a G. I don't think I've really seen currently anything at an F. So yeah, if you were looking for that, everything's horrible. It isn't. It's newly better.
My new dishwasher. Oh, my back.
Yeah.
Sorry, when I mentioned the word dishwasher,
you get a twinge now, yes.
That was, I think it's E-rated. And
that's really good.
I was thinking, well, that's ridiculous, because the one I'm just chucking out was like a C-rated or something like that. You know, but then it's because, like you said, they've changed the ratings. It's like the A levels, isn't it? All the A levels are now they're having to do A star, A 2 stars, and you know, why don't they just give you a percentage? Well, you've done.
When I were a lad, if you got a B, you were quite good, right? And if you got an A, you were going to Oxbridge. That's how it used to work, you know. So you know. F was okay because that was F for fail. And they don't like to fail anymore. They just pass less well.
I wondered where you were going with that one, Peter. I thought it was going to be F.
Where are me effing grade? Yes.
I was going to say, the new boiler we got about 4 or 5 years, well, no, we're about 6 years ago now. That was rated as A plus. But boiler efficiencies have got more and more better, and now it's effectively a D. And the newer ones are really very, very efficient, and the latest ones are some extremely efficient and
I've seen
on power. But other things you can do is some TVs, mine for instance, you can actually have. You don't have to have a separate box for FreeSat.
It's all within it.
Satellite connectors, so you can do FreeSat and Freeview if you want to.
That's why Panasonic does that.
Yes, I think it's Panasonics are about the only one that do that. There may be Samsung, a few models, but I think it's generally Panasonic. Yes, you've got everything in the one box.
Well, it's Sony in this case, but you can do that, and you could run. In fact, because the satellite is pointed in the right direction, when I had one, I could get the Sky. When I had Sky, I could get the FreeSat, and I could get Freeview all on the same unit.
That's right. Yeah.
The FreeSat though picked up a lot of so we say interesting foreign stations. Thing, but
you mean religious?
I've got rid of the satellite now and got rid of Sky because Sky costs too much. You do have to check your bills if you've got Sky very carefully, because what they did with me, I was on a package for entertainment and films. Didn't have sport, but when Formula One first came out on Sky, they gave it to me as a freebie.
Right, and then started charging. Yeah, that's a favourite.
They changed the entertainment package.
Unfortunately,
but didn't tell me they changed it.
No.
And started charging me for the F1, which was supposed to be free. I happened to spot it when I went online. I thought, hang on a minute, what are they doing charging this? So I rung them up and they said, we didn't want you to have to pay less. Didn't want you to have to pay less money than you pay now.
No, I mean, this is what I hate.
Take it off and thing. And then they argued about it and said, oh, we can't, you get discounts for having that on it, and I said, take it off.
Yeah.
And a few months later, I just scrapped them, but they weren't prepared to give me a deal. So I said, I'd dump them. But the channels I watch, I got Now TV. I'm getting it for half the price I could have got with the Sky package.
I mean, this is it. You have to decide. Yeah, you have to decide what you want to watch. Do I have to watch it now? And to be honest, I can wait 3 years for something to come onto restaurant TV. I don't have to be up with everybody else. You can tell me all about it. I mean, I can find out myself later. I'm not that bothered. Having said that, I watch lots of TV and I enjoy what's on the free channels.
Well, when I did have Sky, and then I was only watching a limited number of channels. I thought, what do I pay for half this load of junk? Half it's a load of junk. So I just thought, right, go down to Now TV, save myself 20 odd quid a month or more. Although Now TV is owned by Sky effectively, but
it's a subset of.
The thing is, they can do it, and they're already still giving me discounts. I'm getting 50% off on one of the part of the deal anyway. So, so I get it through the broadband instead of over the air. Yeah, and that's the way they're going. Sky Glass is the way they're going. They're going to go over broadband. They're going to get rid of satellite dishes eventually. They've already done it in Italy, I think it is, in parts of Germany. So, but it's just way of saving, haggle and get the price down. The same.
Any time you're coming up for a contract renewal, I just say leaving and see how much the price goes down. You shouldn't have to, but I think that it's almost, what do we call it, an antitrust thing, that if you're a loyal customer, you actually lose loads of money. You should just keep leaving and coming back. If you leave on Thursday and come back on Friday and it'd be 20 quid cheaper, which is stupid. So I think they're trying to change the law on that one.
I've just noticed Vince's comment here. I could definitely save money by going upstairs all day, but I'm not sure the person in that flat would be too happy. Great way of making new friends, though. Come on.
Yeah. Who lives in the top flat? Unless you've got a flat roof, in which case they won't have any insulation on it. So maybe they're next to the top flat.
By the way, Peter, you were questioning smart meters, and a matter of interest, why?
Because people get addicted to them and they'll go and switch off, things you shouldn't switch off. Like one of the things I forgot to mention, apart from the fridge, the other thing you probably shouldn't switch off, and I did this at first because nobody told me, was switched off my router. And of course it takes time to work out what the best settings are for itself to get you the best bandwidth. So it's only the fridge and the router you should leave on, even if you go on holiday, I think, because you wouldn't really want to wait 3 days for your router to get back up to speed, would you? So that's another sort of odd thing along the way there.
Well, I've got a UPS on my route. I've got a UPS on my routers.
Right.
Because then, if we do have a mains outage, I hope it'll stay up at the speed.
Yeah. One of the things I was showing to some of my Silver Surfers at the group that I teach, local to me. I'll just share this screen with you. And that is, there we go. That's these things.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
They're about 15 quidish on Amazon. And whatever you plug into it, it will give you a readout there in how many watts that device is using, or over a period of time it'll tell you how many kilowatt hours that device has used. I think it's really useful for 15 quid, and it gives you a lot more information about any individual device. The smart meters are good insofar as they give you sort of like a green, yellow and red region, and obviously when you've got oven chips in and the microwave's going and the dishwasher's going all at the same time, it's like
and when your electric car is charging, it takes even more.
As it happens, I haven't got an electric car yet, but maybe soon.
See, so
Yeah. Now you see, no one's worked out you can put your exercise bicycle into your electric car rather than just running a fan. It could actually be a generator.
You could just go out on your bike, but
and then of course you save on the heating because you're getting really hot pedaling the bike. So it's like double whammy, really, isn't it? And when you got a piece of wood that's with a blunt saw, you're off. No heating in the house needed whatsoever, and you're charging your car up.
I've got one like similar to one meter to what Bruce had. I got it some time ago, several years ago, but I think from Maplin actually, I remember rightly. But another thing, did you know? Recently pointed out on one, I think it was on BBC or something. 3 of the most power-hungry devices in your entertainment thing are PlayStation 4s, 5, and Xboxes.
It's graphics cards.
Especially if you're gaming, it hammers your electricity.
Yeah.
It uses, I forget the figures now, but it uses a considerable amount of power, basically.
It'll probably be over 200 watts because basically, as I mentioned, graphics cards chew through stuff, and even if you're doing nothing,
and the monitor, whatever.
Yeah.
I remember the processor in an Xbox or PlayStation's a descendant of the old Power PC processor that Apple abandoned for Intel in 2007.
Yeah.
It's trying to be less efficient even than modern Intel processors, let alone ARM chips.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, all graphics processors are faster than any main CPU. And in fact, once upon a time, they built some supercomputers out of PlayStations by using the graphic cards as a calculating bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it gives you a clue, doesn't it? So, yeah, anything that's graphics processor intensive. But I say it'd be interesting to see, and I don't think I've seen a comparison in any of the Pro magazines of the power that the ARM-based Macs don't use compares to the same grunt as a PC with a mega graphics card, because we know ARM processors are less power hungry, and they have a different thing. I think they call it the big little architecture, where if you're not doing much with your ARM powered Mac, it doesn't use much, and if you are, it does. So whereas PCs are fairly thick in that respect, but conversely, Macs have sort of taken this little niche of doing audio-visual things, and video editing's been a big thing of theirs. And I think I mentioned that I think a mid-range Mac laptop, whatever that price is, I think about 1,300, something like that, can beat a custom PC at 2,500 for speed and efficiency on video editing. So unless you're doing something really well out of it with a 3D graphics card on a PC, don't buy a PC, buy a Mac. But I've not seen a comparative review of that. But I know they take less power and they do more stuff. Yeah. So that's what you want, isn't it, really? So PC's in the bin, really. As I say, looking at that little graph that we did, if I'm sure a lot of people are using Pi 4, whatever, with a monitor, it's 40 watts.
My main PC, which is up in the computer room, I'm down in the dining area at the moment, but my main PC, it's not particularly powerful. It's got an i7 processor in it, 16 gig of RAM, is it?
Yeah, so reasonably modern spec. Yeah.
It's not really. No, it's about 6 years old now. So in computer terms, it's getting on a bit,
Yeah.
Having said that, it's got 2 monitors at the side of it. It's got all the peripherals plugged into it. So when it's running, it is consuming a fair bit of juice. I haven't got round to measuring it, but it's something I'm hoping to do this week, to literally find out how much power it is using. When I'm just doing something relatively simple, I now sit at my desk, and in fact, I'll show you a photo that I just. Here's one I took earlier.
Here's one I took earlier, yeah.
Which is that was literally taken, half an hour ago while Peter was in full flow, so to
pontificating,
speak. Pontificating, and
something like that.
And it's an 11-year-old iMac, i5 processor, 4 gigs of RAM. So this is the one I'm using right now at this moment. The only thing I've done to it was I took the hard drive out, and I put in a used solid state drive. Which is only, I think it's only 120 gig. So it's one that I'd had in a laptop and then I upgraded the laptop.
Yeah.
So this one was going begging. So the hard drive that was in this Mac was very slow and cumbersome. So I've taken that out, thrown it away and put in another solid state drive, and it's made the whole thing so much more usable.
Yeah.
Plus the fact that it's no longer running Mac OS.
No.
It's running Linux Mint.
Yeah.
Linux Mint.
Yeah.
I was going to say you would be able to run probably the current version of Mac OS on it.
No, this is the thing about going out of date. Yeah.
Reset of the hardware. It phones home and talks to Apple and says, I'm an iMac 2011, blah, blah, blah. And Apple say, well, here's the only version of Mac OS that you're allowed to run. And there are hacks, of course, there are that can make it run a later version, but would you want to? I don't know. But I'm so happy with it running Linux Mint. It's lovely. And, it's not the most... There's 3 different versions of Linux Mint. There's the Cinnamon version, which has got the all singing, all dancing desktop. This one is the Mate desktop, which is slightly more old-fashioned desktop, does everything I need it to do. And then there's one using, is it called the LX? That's the one. Thank you. Yeah. Thanks, David. That one, which is a very basic desktop, but it still does probably 99% of what you want it to do.
Well,
and it's just there, and it probably only takes a quarter of the power that the PC upstairs would take.
Exactly the point. So, I mean, as I say, Pi 4 for a lot of us RISC-OSC type people, and particularly if you've got the Iris browser, will do a lot. And it's only really doing things like Zoom. We haven't got a Zoom program to run on RISC-OS. That's where you need to have a PC. But it's getting less and less, as time goes on.
On a Pi if it was running Linux?
Yes, you could do most of the stuff. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
There's a version of Zoom client for Linux.
Yeah, I think the most modern, I think the 42 and the one from RISC-OSC bits now are dual operation, aren't they? Because it's always run on a Linux, because that's an underlying sort of bits within a Pi, and I think both of those now you can choose, do I want RISC-OSC, do I want Linux? Here's a switch. And I think don't quote me on this, the newest ones don't even need a memory stick on the side, because on my ARM book, if you put a micro SD card in, it runs RISC-OS. If you switch it off, plug it out, it runs Linux. So if you want the Wi-Fi and a WYSI browser and whatever programs that aren't available, you do that, so you've got one machine that does both. I mean, if we get dual monitors on RISC-OSC and the Wi-Fi, and I think the Wi-Fi has probably only come before the dual monitors, that's somewhere there. And if Iris is out, and the argument is for free, possibly by Christmas, or you could pay the £50 now and have a something like version. I've got an old version of Iris on my ARM book, and it does a lot of websites. It does tons more than, I've almost forgotten the other one we used to use.
NetSurf.
That's it, yeah. It does tons more sites than NetSurf. As I say, I've got an early version. I think I'm on version 2 of the OS, and I think they're now on 3, as in the 3rd version, not in number terms. And I think you might have a more recent version of Iris on that, but it's still not the one you would get if you were someone who's paid to have Iris via store, or you're in the chosen ones, in which case you're getting the most modern version. But it seems fairly capable. But as I say, if you've got dual boot option within Pis, and the more modern ones will do that. I think there have been some articles on how to do that with Pis that you've got. The only thing then stopping you is the Wi-Fi and possibly the dual monitor, because it'd be bonkers if you had dual monitors on a Pi. The Pi takes 10 watts. The monitor's taking 3 times more each than the computer. But of course, depending on how many monitors you want, switch one or both of them off, and just leave it running, doing whatever it is, because it's almost not worth switching off at that. You know, I used to have
the high usage does depend very much on what you're doing with it.
Yes,
I've got a 42, and I was having, I believe, I still haven't solved it, overheating problems. It was getting intermittency, and I've got the fan running now at 50% to keep it the right temperature. But if you look at the if you start using it intensively, you'll see the temperature creep up as you do, you do that.
Yeah.
So obviously it does use a fair bit extra power to actually work as opposed to sitting there.
Oh yeah, I think if you were looking at like the idle figures that we have for the laptops, there was something like, I think, 50, 20, and it was like 3 on standby. It'd be a similar proportion for the Pi. But I mean, if you just sat it there doing nothing, I bet you it'd take less than 2 watts.
Yeah.
And we're talking about only going up to 10 when you thrash the pants off it.
Yeah.
You know, so, I mean, it's not even fast.
You still get sufficiently hot in that box.
Oh yeah.
Be uncomfortable to touch the outside box if you don't have the fan running, and I think that's wrong for electronics personally.
The power supply is only supplying 15 watts.
Yeah, that's if you can manage to use everything. Yes, so we know it's taking around about 10. Yeah.
I mean, they say you have to have a 15-watt power supply, which means it won't take more than 15 watts.
That's absolutely correct. Yeah.
That's one theory. It can take more than 15 watts, but at a reduced voltage. So,
well, yes, but then yes, obviously you can keep going, and the voltage will go down, then it'll stop working altogether. Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, under normal usage, they're saying that 15 watts is more than adequate.
Yeah. I mean, what we're talking about here is.
If I could take you back to your router, Peter, you say it takes three days to settle down and all the rest of it.
Yes.
My network equipment is switched off every night.
Oh, really?
When it comes on in the morning, it takes about 2 minutes, and the line is rock solid.
Have you done?
I think this idea that it takes 3 days to acclimatise and that's a lot of cobblers these days.
No.
Are you on fiber?
It changes.
Fiber to the cabinet, so it's still VDSL. It's still ADSL, VDSL.
Yeah.
Because I mean, it's not fiber all the way.
It's not fiber all the way.
You've still got line conditions, and the line conditions stay steady.
Yeah, well, no, I've done it on mine. It did take a couple of days. It was noticeably quicker after a couple of days. So I'm sure it depends on the topography that you've got getting to your house.
I've been doing this for years. Also, in terms of saving electricity, your router and your network disks and your switches are all off.
Well, I can safely say, don't turn the fridge off, though.
No, obviously not. But as I say, this used to be the thing that routers took ages to stabilise. I think it's not true.
Yeah.
Well, mine certainly. I mean, I've gone on to fibre to the home, and and the 3 days when I had to turn the router off for something purpose, it was 3 days before I got my speed back up again. Now, it comes back on. It's there. But at a much slower speed, and does take 3 days to come up.
Well, I don't know what the difference is, but as I say, mine comes on in the morning in less than 2 minutes, and the speed and the line conditions are exactly the same as they were yesterday.
Right, well, I'm going to come round to yours and have an ISDN party or something.
Carried on, it's got to start learning again.
That'll be at full speed.
Leave it on for a week and see if it gets any better.
No, it won't. It can't get any better. It's capped at 80 megahertz a second. So that's it. Yeah. And the line conditions, I measure the line conditions every morning, and the attenuation and noise levels are the same. Right. So it's just log it on straight up.
Yeah, I think the phrase is, you may have variations.
Mileage may vary.
It's that sort of thing,
Well, over the past 10 years, I've saved a few watts of electricity.
Good.
Without any bother.
Yeah.
I've got a Raspberry Pi power supply there. It came with the Raspberry Pi 4, and it's rated at 15 watts.
So that's great.
Yeah.
Yes, they say 10 watts for the 2 and the 3. And 15 watts, they make a big song and dance that you need 15 watts for a 4.
Yeah, it's absolutely horrendous, isn't it? Yeah, it's sort of like just past a standby on some other computers.
And
that's really part of the point, you know.
Look at the level of the backlight on your monitor, because that's a major part of the monitor's power.
Oh, yes.
You turn the backlight down, you save power.
Modern monitors don't have a backlight, of course. They're LEDs.
Yeah. And this is the thing about spending to save. I mean, if you say, I'm going to have a monitor on all day, then the argument is if a newer, better one comes along with less power consumption.
Well, they've been LED for some years now.
Yeah.
Backlights have gone.
But you still turn the brightness down, you'll save power.
Oh, you will, yes.
Yes. Of course, mine's on 50% brightness at the moment, yes.
Yeah, I think I run my arm book on about 50% in the home. It's fine, yeah.
And it's got an automatic shut off. If I leave the desk, it doesn't detect me for a few minutes. It turns it down.
Yeah. So I mean, there's always different ways. I mean, the big things really are actually the heating, and the computers are very much a minor thing. But if you're using the computer all day, depending on what you're doing with it, it can make quite a difference. You know, that's sort of it's knowing the scale of everything, isn't it? How it all fits in.
On your power generation as well, they keep quoting this 30% business for gas, and every time I look, it's much more than 30%. It's 54.5% as we speak.
This is for ground source heat pumps.
No. This is the power supply system.
Oh, right. Yeah, it does vary.
54% of our power is coming from gas at the moment.
Yeah,
we can't do without gas. This is the problem. This idea that we can exist on the wind power is 12%.
Right. Obviously, more info than me. Yeah.
In that heat wave we had, it was 2% for many days.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's the catch that way around.
60% gas. It doesn't matter how many windmills you have. If there's no wind, you get no juice.
You can get no milling.
You don't seem to be able to grasp this at all. I mean, this idea that you could buy green energy is cobblers, because it's over 40% gas all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, it's 50.
The only renewers are interested in is wind power and solar power. And if it's a dull...
Yes, how much solar power we're getting at the moment?
Stuck.
Yes. I mean, even we're getting no solar power at the moment, and even when it's sunny, you're only getting it for about 4 hours during the day.
Yeah,
but it's very, very low either side. If you look at, there's a site called GridWatch, which gives you this, and you can see the solar power goes up sort of between about 10 and 2, and then it's back down again.
Yeah. So I mean, really, what we're saying is, if you can get the most efficient house, you're not going to pay much to heat it. So then you're saving on everything, aren't you, really?
When I was a teenager doing physics, I was telling people that they should build insulated houses, and they're still not doing it.
No.
And when I was a teenager was a few years ago.
like a few of us, I believe.
But even today, they're not building insulated houses.
No, they're not. I mean, it's something you could almost take the whole housing industry in Britain to task for. I know years and years ago, there was a show house in Knaresborough, just around the corner from me, and that was a Scandinavian one. It had triple glazing 30 years ago. I don't think any British companies make triple glazing, which is like, no, sorry, just go and make it. You know, we shouldn't have to get it from another country, because then you're wasting all your money getting it from another country.
Yeah, everything is much more complex than people give credence for.
Yeah, I mean, it's all interrelated.
Everybody wants a neat little solution, and there ain't a neat little solution.
No. Well, it's build better insulated houses, and you don't have to use as much stuff, isn't it?
Well, precisely.
For homeowners, anyway. You know,
as schoolboys I won't tell you what year, but in schoolboys when we were teenagers, it was obvious you need to build insulated houses. But even today, they're not doing it.
No.
Way back in the 90s, Bruce.
Yeah, back in the 90s.
You must be joking.
Yeah, well, I think that they have changed something. At least they've got landlords now. I think all houses have to be up to category D.
Yes, but
that's still rubbish.
In terms of proper insulation, that's neither here nor there.
No, but I mean, I was looking for some houses in the northeast once, and I fell off the chair one day because I saw one that was G rated. I said, I think that's one where you open the windows and it gets warmer.
Well, the big problem is the walls need to be insulated.
Yes, of course.
And it's very difficult to retro insulate walls.
Absolutely.
When they're being
particularly if you've got solid 9-inch walls, as we have.
Yeah.
Oh yes, we're the same. We've got solid walls.
Yeah.
And there's not a lot you can do about it.
The house was built in 1911. They didn't think about those things in those days.
No.
Coal was cheap in those days.
Well, they didn't heat the houses in those days, which was the main thing.
Oh, that's right.
There were three open fireplaces, I think.
Yeah.
But only one was in use. Very rarely use the bedroom ones unless somebody was ill.
Yeah, I'm still trying to work out. I know it won't work in my house because I don't have a chimney. Are you allowed to have log burners? Because we'll all be just going on holidays and bringing wood back. So you don't have to pay any gas or electric, do you? If you're allowed to have log burners. But I don't know how the smokeless goes on log burners.
I've got no chimney in my house. My house.
Me neither. Yeah, mine's
my
too
house
modern.
was built in the early 60s.
Yeah.
When nuclear power was first coming online.
Yes.
Houses, these houses, the whole estate around where I live, were fitted with underfloor electric heating.
Is not the best.
No, underfloor electric heating, because they were told that when nuclear power comes online, the power is going to be so cheap. It's not worth it. It
just
won't be
doesn't
worth
matter.
sending your bill out.
Unfortunately, you have to keep building new power stations because they only last 30 years.
That's right.
Unfortunately, in the 90s, the government decided they wouldn't build nuclear power stations. So we've now got we've got 15% from nuclear at the moment.
Yeah,
one time we had a steady 25%.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. And one of the things I was looking at, I did a very small business course donkeys years ago. And the first thing that nearly everybody in the world misses out, and this is all leading governments, big businesses, what if? So what if we got all our gas from one person and they decided to chop off the supply? Oh, hello, Europe. Yeah, so don't ever have a single source for anything. Plan for the future and invest, spend to save. Page one.
Norway's electricity is all hydro.
Yes, well, they've got a bit of hydro to go with.
France's electricity is 90-something% nuclear.
Yes, yeah. And of course, EDF are going to build the next nuclear power station, aren't they? The French company.
In 20 years' time, yes.
In 20 years' time, when a lot of us might not be here.
It should have been built 20 years ago, so they're 40 years behind.
Yeah,
I've got 3 very tall conifers in my back garden.
You have
how
at the
long
moment.
do you reckon they'll burn for?
Well, if you use a blunt saw, you won't even need to set them on fire, Ruth.
You're not supposed to put out particulates these days, are you?
Well, this is it. That's why I was asking the wood burner question. Are you actually allowed to have a wood burner? Are they being sold as
people do have wood burners, so I'm not quite sure where the allowed comes in.
Well, it's like
you don't make visible smoke. I would suspect you'd get away with it.
Well, it's an interesting thing. Was it there's certain things you were allowed to sell, but you weren't allowed to use, and I've never understood that.
Yeah,
why would you ever have that as an option?
Yes, there was a spate of FM transmitters for various things at one time.
Some CB.
I said to the guy, I said, "You're selling illegal stuff," and he said, "No, I'm allowed to sell it." He says, "It's just you're not allowed to use it."
To use it, that's absolutely correct. Yes.
He had a rack of these. It was an exhibition. There's a wall full of these things, plugging like hot cakes.
Absolutely, yeah. I remember I used to do PA systems, and somebody had got their car outside near where my PA amp was. I didn't know it was not very well RF insulated, and they came over the PA louder than we did. So, record 19 here.
I can remember at school a PA system in the middle of a play suddenly came out with the World Service in the middle of the school play. Well, we weren't that far from Daventry, so I suppose it was survivable. But...
Yeah. Well, I think RF sort of interference wasn't seen as something. But of course, all the older versions of mics and PAs had high impedance things, which actually acted as aerials. Of course, I remember trying to get a treble booster for my guitar, and thought, can I stick it through my radio? And the answer is yes, you can, but of course you get the radio as well, unless you choose the right connections. But there you go. Yes.
When I was at college, somebody was running one of Sinclair's amplifiers, which was a pulse width modulator, running at 100 kilohertz.
Yep.
200 kilohertz was radio 2 at the time.
Yeah.
It blotted it out for the whole of Bangor and quite an area around.
There you go. Things you never sort of think about, isn't it? Yeah, yeah. And of course, now we do use I think it's Class D amplifiers, aren't they? PWMs. They're now a staple thing in large PA systems, because otherwise you have heat sinks. Well, probably like a nuclear power station. So the answer is turn up the power amps on non-Class D things, isn't it? Have a big gig and keep everybody warm by keeping in the same room anyway. They were warm amplifiers.
Yeah, well, those amps that I brought along for the Wakefield show in Bradford, that Wakefield show.
Yeah, that one.
I mean, they're ridiculously heavy. They're just they've got a massive great lump of iron in there. There's a transformer. And I've now just acquired a 1,000 watt stereo amp, produce 1,000 watts into 2 ohms bridged. Yeah, it'll do. Pick it up with one hand as easy as anything.
Oh yeah.
Ridiculous. Yeah. It's Class D. So
that's
much
right.
more efficient. Yeah. And I don't put my back out lifting them.
No, that's the nice thing about them. Now you want is helium-filled speakers that you can just have on a piece of string.
Or you can buy speaker stands that have got gas lifts in, like you have on the
right, yeah.
So you put your speaker on it at a sort of chest height, and then pull a pin out, and it goes psss, and up it goes.
Yeah.
I've just bought a couple of those because it saves putting
a lot of back work. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Saves the old vertebrae, does it?
As long as you don't go sniffing the gas like the youths do.
Different type of gas, I think.
They'll probably still sniff it.
Hope they're not like the pop-up tents, 10 seconds to put them up and 5 minutes to get them back in the bag.
That's why so many of them get abandoned after festivals, isn't it? They try and put them down the bugger it. Just leave it, set fire to it.
Yes, there's eco for you, not. Yeah. Well, I hope you've all enjoyed all that lot. One of the other things we're looking at was possibly having a general chat about RISC-OS bits and pieces, but I think we've got to 9:30 quite well, haven't we? So maybe not, I don't know. One thing, I don't know if anyone's had a look at the programming challenge. You know, Derek Barron sent me an email to say about this one for the countdown clock down to 1 from like 40 minutes. I think it was in one of the recent issues of the WROCC, wasn't it? I don't know if anyone's had a look at that. I found something that might do something like that, but it doesn't, because it's going the wrong way. And it was from XAT in the Netherlands. They did a set of video programs. Anyone that knows about video used to have leader clocks and things like that, but one of the things was a timer for like football matches, and that put, I think, some Homerton medium text on a PAL screen. So it would have been a mode 12 or 15, but there's some special modes for the overscan. But I've not been able to work out how to make it go backwards and get bigger. I've given up with that one as well. But one thing I did have a look at was, I think, you can define sprites, can't you, in BBC Basic? And you can define 4x4 sprites. So I was looking at possibly designing 4x4 digits, which obviously will be the largest thing on the low res modes on a BBC screen. But then you still have to do the timer to do the minutes and seconds and all that sort of stuff. So maybe later, we'll see. I've not done BBC Basic for yonks. So, but yes. Right, so we'll go and looking at power saving. Those things that Ruth mentioned, I used to have one of those. That's where I've got some of the readings from for some of these, but say some of the other ones were from Computer Shopper, but the more modern magazines don't give you the 3 states to stand by. They're not doing very much and thrashing the pants off it, or maximum power usage, I think might be the more correct terminology for it. But let's say, if it sort of makes you wonder why anyone would use a PC, really, you know, for the power ratings anyway.
Yeah.
So,
But as soon as I can stand up properly and kneel down properly and stand up again,
in the same day.
The same day would be nice. Yeah. And I'll dig out my power meter, and I'll measure all the stuff up in my main office, and then I'll do a comparison of it switched off or in standby and running at full tilt. I'll compare it perhaps with this Mac that I've got here and a couple of laptops, and just stick it in a write-up for the WROCC.
Yeah, well, as I say, the things that are brought up on that spreadsheet, they're reasonably current. I mean, the Pi ones are roundabout right because we know how much they don't take. Monitors, I've checked some before now, had a look at some in the, because they don't have a standby one in the Computer Active magazine. So those should be right. But of course, it depends what you've got. So SSDs, we know take less power than a normal hard drive. We know that if you've got integrated graphics, they use a lower power version of a separate graphics card. But obviously, you can, even on a laptop, you can specify higher power graphics cards, bigger hard drives. Even if they're SSD, the bigger they are, the more they're potentially going to take, but less in relative terms to a normal spinny hard drive. So things are getting better. But the fact, as I say, I think most of the processors for PCs can take 50 watts. That's just the main processor, and then you can stick the graphics card on the end of that. So if it's not an integrated one, so you can. Sorry. What's that?
No, I just typed a message in. Yeah, actually, you're on about wood burning stoves and so on.
Oh, right.
Apparently, some houses here still burn coal, because it's an ex-mining village. And
that's right.
They get, I don't know if it's free coal or what, but in winter, some houses you can walk by, you can smell a coal fire.
Yeah,
black smoke coming out of the chimney.
Yeah, I think there's still a miners thing. If you were a miner, you will still get free or vastly subsidised coal, and you're allowed to have a coal fire. Because I know that when my girlfriend is in Durham, it used to be massive coal fields all around Durham, and there used to be a mine. Well, that was basically the basis for the village where she lives. You can't even tell there was a coal mine there anymore. That's the interesting thing. You'd have to know where you thought it might be to find it. But yeah, still smell coal every so often up there.
It's nice when you go to if you have to go into the loft, because you have to put paper down. Well, the landing has to be covered because you come down like you just swept the chimney.
Yeah. Interesting fact for you here. I was talking about choosing the day to do your washing. Obviously, if you're working all week, this is a bit tricky. But, if you looked at Saturday and Sunday, and one day is better than the other, that's the day you should do your washing, so you don't have to use a tumble dryer, But did you know most people used to wash on Mondays, and this is particularly true for Ruth's area of the world, Sheffield. And why did they do the washing on Monday? Well, the answer was the factories might have closed down on Saturday and Sunday. There's not quite as much soot in the air on the Monday. So you might actually get back white clothes rather than black ones. So that's
smut-free, as they said. Smut-free.
Smut-free, yes. Whatever happened to that? Yeah. I do remember when I was growing up, if you swung high on the swings in our local park, could see 13 mil chimneys belching away. I think there's only one chimney, and I don't think it does very much now. So
they used to say about Sheffield, it's so the only place he knows that you can wake up in the morning to hear the sparrows coughing.
Yes. Sounds about right, yeah. Yeah. Except on Mondays. Monday hanging the washing out, yeah. Yeah, it's. I don't know how much is still left. I've not been through a city centre for a couple of years, I must admit. I think there's still a few big factories left, aren't there, or the remains of them.
Oh, in Sheffield?
Yeah.
There's no factories in Sheffield anymore. The nearest factory is near where I live, the steelworks down in the valley.
Right, yeah.
But very little industry left in Sheffield now.
Yeah. I think
you drive up the M1 through over the top of it, and it's just all entertainment centre, shopping malls. All the steelworks that used to be sandwich there have all vanished.
Yeah.
Yeah. And now there's romanticism for old mills and stuff like that. In fact, where I grew up was sort of like cotton mill country in Lancashire, which explains the vast rainfall over there. It stops your threads drying out and snapping. But I don't think there's actually very many cotton mills left as such. I think there's a few for sort of like museum purposes. But we used to have a red and yellow glazed brick thing, which was like 7 stories high, which had its own weir, own railway sidings, all that sort of stuff. Just about remember the railway sidings when I was growing up. I think they're sort of taking the rails off it from then. But then they knocked down the whole thing probably 40 years ago, something like that. So I think there's another one similar style with the glazed bricks somewhere near Manchester. I know there's a few heritage cotton mills around and about, but yes, disappearing.
This is Queen Street at oh dear, one of the B's. Oh.
Bradford.
No.
Blackburn.
Burnley, yeah.
Burnley, yes, yeah.
And there's Ellen Road near Milnthorpe, Rochdale.
Right.
Both got huge steam engines.
Right, yes.
We've also got one of your huge steam engines, again from Burnley, in the Science Museum.
Right, yeah. Oh, some interesting stuff.
From Hull Sykes Works in Burnley. Yeah.
Right, that's interesting because my mum used to live in Hull Syke, and in fact, when I was young, I remember, I don't know which one it was, my granddad used to take us to have a look at the steam engine because he cleaned it on a Saturday.
Right.
Polished it up.
The Hull Syke one is in the Science Museum.
Is it?
And the one across the road in Queen Street is still there.
Right, yeah.
And it was out of action for a while, but I think they may have got it going again.
Yeah.
Because the chimney had to be repaired.
Yeah.
And of course, you can't run a steam engine with no chimney.
I don't think so. Yeah, and Fred's no longer around, is he, Mr. Dibner?
No, they had to repair the chimney.
If anyone said, "What job do you not want to do at school?" I think that'd be the one for me. If you get about
the other problem is, will all these museums and heritage railways be allowed to use coal?
I think
they're having to buy coal abroad, which is of poor quality.
Oh,
they're not allowed to dig it up in this country with the good quality stuff.
But so, can they burn logs from renewable forests?
No.
They can't. It's not a different temperature, is it? Yeah.
Well, it's the design of the boiler.
Right.
Tender. It just wouldn't work.
No. Right.
I mean, yes, there are oil would be the nearest, an oil burner. Of course, in terms of environmental, it's not a lot better, is it?
Like the same stuff, presumably, that they use on ships and that sort of oil. Really heavy stuff.
Yes, there are wood burning locos in other countries.
Yes, that was I was thinking. Yeah.
But obviously, you need a huge tender, and you need a different boiler.
Yeah. You see things you never thought about. Yeah.
There are gas powered locos as well. There's a mountain railway in Switzerland had 3 brand new locos built for it, and they're gas powered.
Yeah.
Which of course is great because you just turn the gas off when you're not using it.
Yeah.
They also, in terms of insulation, they've got insulated boilers, which means when they go to start up in the morning, they can get it out of the shed with the steam that was left from the previous night.
Yeah, that's sneaky. Yeah, I think the only thing I remember about steam trains, my dad used to work, my granddad used to work on the Canadian Pacific Railway. Right. I think he was the fireman, and he said, "Oh yes, you used to have a cooked breakfast every day." I said,
"Oh yeah."
So we just put the eggs and bacon on the shovel. It was
that's the old story. Cooking the egg and bacon on the shovel. I'm not quite sure if anybody did it, but it's certainly some of the heritage railways do it for demonstration purposes.
Yeah, well, I mean, every time the shovel went in, it was anaesthetised, wasn't it, basically?
Well,
burnt all the bad bits off and then just put your egg on and off you go.
Well, yes. I certainly wouldn't like to cook eggs on a steam loco shovel.
No. It's only carbon. It's very good.
Well, yes, it's only carbon, yes.
And we're carbon-based.
Carbon doesn't taste very nice, if I remember rightly.
It's no different from burnt toast. I mean,
no, but there are a number of people who don't like burnt toast.
Well, that's their fault.
Wimps.
obviously weren't brought up in my household. I'm not saying my mum was a bad cook, but we used to have crispy salads because they were done under the grill.
Oh dear.
Yeah, I think it's a good book.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for your attendance, Ruth, and I'll be catching up with you to have a look at that video equipment at some point.
Indeed.
Yeah. Okay.
So I'm going to have to disappear because my back is giving me some.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Okay.
Word of warning to anybody installing a new dishwasher: make sure the instructions are correct before you follow them like an idiot. Because the instructions I got with this dishwasher were completely and utterly wrong, and I had the dishwasher installed 4 times.
Oh, it sounds like my boiler. They installed it 3 times before they got the pipework in the right configuration.
Well, there is this thing now about international sort of wordless descriptions, which I've called, well, internationally unacceptable to anybody. I mean, I saw one for an IKEA thing, and it was corner unit for a PC, you know, and your monitor and all that sort of stuff. And you had to work out that the drawer went this way up, and that decided the size and the way that everything else joined up. But you had to know that, otherwise, you know, the whole thing would just fall to pieces, you know, and not work at all. So internationally incomprehensible, I call them.
Yeah, it's definitely not going to get one of those crystal marks for clarity.
No, well, I think I've told you, Ruth, I actually have been a finalist in Plain English Awards. So, you know, the world to me is a very bad place most of the time.
Right, I have to go. I shall speak to you on.
See you then. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Right,
bye, everyone.
I think I'll